Well, good morning.
Good morning.
We are continuing our series on the 7 laws of prosperity with law number 2, the law of supply. We are divinely supplied. We heard it in the song. Oh my gosh, was that not wonderful?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
And we heard it in the meditation, and we hear it in the other songs we sing. But how do we engage that? That is exactly what we've been exploring. And we're going to look at the law of supply by saying, are you satisfied? Are you satisfied? I know we live in a culture where we're taught we're supposed to be satisfied with what we've got, aren't we? Well, I'm here to tell you something. If you are satisfied, you will not prosper. Does that sound shocking? No? Darn. I keep trying to get you off. Creation. All of creation is designed to ever increase and unfold, to always be becoming more than it has been. Unfortunately, we have received a message throughout the ages that somehow wanting more is somehow not good. And the problem we have is we are confusing satisfaction with happiness. They are two different things. They oftentimes go together, but not always. Not always. Satisfaction is complacency. It's like, I'm satisfied. I'm good. Everything's fine. We'll just keep going the way we're going. Happiness is appreciating what we have, what we are, what we're doing. And if you cannot have that appreciation, it's going to be very, very difficult to be dissatisfied in a healthy way. It's going to be very difficult to grow. Because that what we have now, what we are now, who we are now, is the foundation upon which we are going to build whatever we are next, whatever we have next. It holds true for every area of our life. Remember, when we are talking, can you go back one slide, please? Yeah. When we are talking about prosperity, we're talking about holistic. The whole Megillah, as they say in Judaism. All the aspects of it. It's not just our material wealth. It is our health. That is part of our prosperity. It is our relationships. That is part of our prosperity. It is our vocation. Even if we're retired, we still have vocation. We still have things we are doing. And it is also our time, what we call here our time and money freedom, our ability to not be bound by the material world. So we're going to talk more on what that means as we go. You can go back to the other slide now. Thank you. So I want to be clear about something. Because there's something called the prosperity gospel or prosperity theology. Have any of you heard of it? You have been exposed to it, I promise you. And it's very prevalent in our country, in our culture right now. And this is not the prosperity that we are talking about here. Prosperity theology is all about this idea that God rewards you for certain behaviors, or for certain ways of speaking, or for certain ways of praying, or belonging to the right church, and then you get to be prosperous. And then if you're not, it's because God is angry at you. That's not what we are talking about here. Okay? It is not. I want to be very clear on this. The whole idea of the prosperity gospel is that God loves you if you are obedient. God rewards you if you are obedient. And you are better than somebody else if you are rewarded. That's not what we teach in unity. God is not pleased with you or displeased with you because God is already within you. And you can choose whatever degree you wish to express that supply that God is in your life. There's another aspect to some of the prosperity gospel teachings that are so prevalent in our culture today, and that is, if you are not prosperous, it is because Satan is attacking you. We don't believe that. We did say back in October, we may do Satan again sometime. There's a problem with this gospel, this prosperity theology that is so prevalent today. And it is this, that teaches us to always be fighting to keep what we've got. Because it can be taken away. God could become displeased with you. You were bad today. This bill is going to come up, or this, you're going to get your house broken into, or I'm going to punish you. Or Satan could come and get you. And so it breeds this consciousness of, I've got to keep what's mine. And I've got to somehow get more in case God gets displeased with me, so I have a little bit of a nest egg until God, and I make up. And what happens with that is, people often get what they think they need at the expense of somebody else. This way of thinking that has become so prevalent encourages subjugation of other people. It creates class distinctions and class envy and division in communities. It promotes racism, bigotry, and elitism. And so I want to be very clear that is not what this is about. Because prosperity for us only works if everybody is prosperous. That's the whole idea. So what we are going to be looking at is prosperity principles that are founded in spiritual laws. That's what every great master brought to us in their teachings. And this will allow us to be free from the fear of not having enough. I remember hearing a lot growing up, well, we got to save for a rainy day. And yeah, having some savings is good. But why are we saving for a rainy day? Who wants rainy? Well, we live where I used to live in the desert. A rainy day is kind of nice once in a while. But around here, we got enough. We don't need to save for extra rainy days. And so what we're looking at is laws that teach us that we have a sacred obligation to ensure that prosperity is not just an individual goal. It is a communal goal. And when I say communal, I mean the entire planet. Every person on it. It's not limited to financial wealth, but rather it is divine principle of abundance in all areas for all people. And the nice thing about this is it actually encourages inclusivity. It encourages practicing prosperity by reaching out, by being supportive, by being good neighbors, by being good stewards of our resources, so that we may help others. And it encourages personal growth. Because as I said, if you are satisfied, you might want to rethink that. I mean, why are you here? Satisfaction is complacency, as I said. And God did not intend for us to be complacent. There is nothing in all of creation that is complacent. We know it's evolving all the time, and growing and changing all of the time. And the law of all of creation, and humanity included, is always perpetual increase. Perpetual increase. It's natural that once a higher state of consciousness is achieved, and we think we've arrived, after a while we say, oh, no, there's something else. We all have those times in our lives where, wow, I've made it now. And after a while we go, oh, no, there's got to be a new goal. There's got to be something new to reach for, or else why even be here? So the law of good is part of this. Everybody is seeking good whether they know it or not. And seeking good is the natural state. Jesus said this, he said, whatsoever things you desire. So often we're taught in religion, oh, you shouldn't want anything, you shouldn't desire anything. And yet here's Jesus right here saying, whatever you desire, when you pray, believe that you have already received it, and you shall have it. Now that's not woo-woo magic. So that could be, I pray that I have a bright orange Ferrari. And bang, it shows up right here. First of all, y'all would have to move back. Second of all, I don't know if I can get it out of the building. That's not what it means. What it means is, it's okay to desire something. In fact, we should have a desire for something. For better relationships, for more prosperity, for better health, for growth, whatever it may be for you. And it can be more than one thing. When you pray, know that it's already here in substance. That song, As in Heaven, what was the title? It went right up my head. Here as in Heaven, thank you. Here as in Heaven. Heaven is divine mind. It's the realm where everything exists. And it becomes through creation, through us, as we enter into that consciousness that, okay, all the ideas I need to prosper are in God's mind. And if they're in God's mind, I have access to them. They are here. And I can bring that from that higher place to where I am. That's the whole meaning of that line. Here as in heaven. Or in the Lord's Prayer, as in heaven. What is that? I haven't said the Lord's Prayer in ages. You know it. As in heaven, so on earth, whatever. Yeah, that one. And whether we know it or not, whether we are conscious of it or not, every single human being on earth uses this law all of the time. We are always manifesting whatever it is we are holding in consciousness. The law works, and the law is impartial. And if you are holding in consciousness, oh, the economy's going to crash and I'm going to lose everything. The law says, well, that's what you're declaring. Okay, we can do that. Or, oh, it's cold and flu season. I'm going to get the cold and the flu. You can, if you want. They tried to get me the other day. The emphasis is on try. Look at any area of your life. Any area of your life. If there is something that you want more of, ask yourself, what am I visioning in that area of my life? What is it I am holding in my consciousness in that area of our life? Do I know that God is my supply? Do I really know that? Or is my supply limited to whatever is out here on this plane, on earth? We affirm repeatedly that God is our supply. We just sang a bunch of songs about God is the source of my supply. That one. Do we really believe it, though? Do we really, really, really believe that? I promise you, if you really believe that, you would have a whole different outlook on your supply. Because you would know it is unlimited. We act all the time, and not just here in this room, all of us act all the time as if our supply is limited. And we kind of hold back, we get confused, and we get that God is the source, and everything else is resource. Keep that line in your head. God is the source, everything else is resource. In other words, if you have a job, and you get a paycheck, does that come from your employer? The paper check does. But what's the source? What is the source? The source is God. The source is God coming through you as the talents that you give in exchange for that. Everything that we do is an exchange of energy. When you give your tithes and love offerings, it's an exchange of energy. And it's, I got this energy, I got this lesson, I am giving back so that it will continue and so that it will increase. Let me show you a little example of how that works. I have a balloon. So I have this little balloon here. And it's kind of small and relatively unflexible. It's kind of flexible, but it's also kind of rigid. But it's open. It's open to receiving its good. And for a balloon, its good is what? It's air. So let's give it some air. Because it is praying for air. I get to be God in this case. And the balloon
fuller.
It's fuller, yeah. Oh, it's so hard to talk to me. It's fuller. Yes, it is. And the balloon can do this. It can give it back and let it go. What happens? It's actually a little bigger than it was before I blew it up the first time. It's hard to tell, I know, but it's also more flexible. It's more flexible. Now, it can receive again because it gave forth. It made room to receive. So it can receive again. And here's the kicker, though. We're like this so often. We receive our good, and oh, I don't want to lose my good. I'm going to hang on to it. I'm not going to let any of it out. I'm not going to let any of it go away. I'm not going to share any of it because, I might need it someday. So we close it off. What happens? This poor little old balloon can no longer receive any more good. And if I wait long enough, what's going to happen? Because there's no such thing as a solid object in all of creation, all the little air molecules are slowly going to seep out of this balloon, and it's going to shrivel up and die. Or it could have some major catastrophe and pop. Oh! 2008 could come, and the economy could lose electors. But if we remain open, if we have that constant giving and receiving, and we're in the cycle of life, the cycle of creation, we are always able to expand to greater and greater and greater good until eventually we do explode, but we explode into something more glorious, more evolved than we were before. That's how this works. That's how the law of supply works. It has to be in a cycle. It has to be in a flow. One of the big challenges we have, though, is we believe in a God, and our culture has taught us that this God is an old man with a beard. Hasn't it? How many times when I say God, you automatically picture the old dude with the beard? Who said that? You do, yeah. Yeah, because that's the image that's in our cultural DNA. Thousands of years of holding that image. The image most people have of the Father, from the Sistine Chapel and all that, is actually Zeus. That's where that old man with the beard came from for our culture. But we know that God is principle. God is that breath that expands us, that feeds us, that causes us to grow, that allows us to grow, that is expressing as us. And so we have this challenge in that we have to believe in something that's not obviously physical right in front of us. We can't touch it necessarily. And it takes that leap of faith. It really does. That, there is this energy. Now, we feel it when we go into meditation. We can feel it all of the time when we're with our loved ones. We get a sense of it. But how many people in our world today actually go within and connect with it? In unity, that's the Christ Spirit. That it is that spark of God that is in us and moves as us. It is that potential that Jesus modeled that we all could do. All these things that I do, you will do more when you believe what I have said, which was the original quote. So what do? How do we then wrap our heads around this idea that there is always everything we need at hand? I'm going to give you a little history lesson now, because it kind of demonstrates it. We all move around in cars, don't we? I mean, you can't throw a rock without hitting a car in the West, in our country, in our world, pretty much nowadays. For thousands upon thousands of years, the primary mode of transportation was either your feet or horses. Horses were really great. And for thousands of years, people were satisfied with that. But not everyone. Not everyone. There have been people down through history who looked and said, oh my gosh, look at the men. I want you to think about something. Cars pollute, yes they do. But have you ever thought what it would be like to live in, let's say, Kansas City, and everybody rode horses? Let me tell you, those old westerns nice and clean and everything. That is not the way it was. And if you've ever been around horses, you know, it's really messy. And if you have thousands of them every day, guess what? So there have been people all through history who said there's got to be some other way, some way to move more efficiently, some way to move cleaner. Well, we're still kind of working on that. Some way to have a vehicle that doesn't take going out a couple times a day and feeding and grooming and cleaning up the stalls and the corrals and all that kind of stuff. And way back in 1206, think about that, 1206, a man by the name of, here we go, Badi Azaman Abu Ishmael Ibn al-Jazari had an idea in 1206. And he created a piston-driven machine to pump water into the fields in Iran and Iraq. Now, he's also famous for something more of you are familiar with, and that his name, down through the ages, has been anglicized into algebra. He's called the father of engineering. But he had this idea that you could change motion from an up and down motion to a circular motion, which is how your car works, by the way. You have pistons that go up and down, and it's converted into a circular motion, which turns the wheels. But people were still satisfied. There weren't that many people dissatisfied. Until we go all the way down to 1794, when Thomas Mead and Robert Street patented at the same time in 2 different places in the world the first internal combustion engine. Because one of the problems with those early piston engines is you had to have something behind them with fuel to run them. And you had to have people shoveling stuff into them. 1807, 2 French engineers, I'm not even going to try their name, built the first gasoline-powered boat and used it on the rivers of France. 1828, an Englishman named Samuel Brown builds the first gas-driven carriage. Did you all know the car went back that far? 1828. 1879, a man named Carl Benz patents a new kind of internal combustion engine, and in 1885, he markets the first official automobile named for his partner's daughter, Mercedes. And of course, we come up to 1896, when Henry Ford builds his very first car, which he called the quadricycle. I've actually, we're not there yet. Can you go advance? Thank you. No, not that one. The shed. Oh yeah. There we go. I've actually been there. And you'll notice it has 2 doors. The problem he had is he was divinely supplied with great ideas, but he didn't figure everything out ahead of time. He built it in that shed, and it only had the 1 door, the small one, and he couldn't get it out. And by the way, it was not his shed. Why do I tell you this? Why do I give you this history lesson? It's because the idea of a car has always been at hand. It's always been there. Everything we needed was already there. It just took people being dissatisfied and opening up to a divine idea of something different. That maybe there's a better way. Now, I'm affirming that somebody out there right now is saying there's a better way to move without using fossil fuels. And we're starting to see some of that. But the fact is, the idea is already there. As in heaven, so on earth. As in divine mind, so in human mind. The law of supply is all we have to do is be open and receptive. And have an idea of what it is we're trying. We don't have to know the details. If you read the e-letter, how many of you read the e-letter? You'll notice we're starting something new. It's going to be a little different. We're not changing this, don't worry. But we're starting something new that's going to be a little different. I have no idea how it's going to evolve or what it's going to look like. All I know is Divine Mind had an idea of how to reach younger people. And I said, all right, there's got to be a way. And it appeared. And the steps appear as you go, but you have to open up and take the very first step. Because a mind that is open can receive new ideas. And once it's coupled with the desire for a greater expression, It brings forth new ways of living, new ways of being, new avenues to grow in, new possibilities. And it works the other way too. All of the poverty in the world is a result of poverty consciousness. Now let me explain that a little bit. Somebody living in the ghetto or in a third world country, it's not their poverty consciousness necessarily that's causing it, because they haven't been exposed to anything different. Where's the poverty consciousness coming from? The poverty consciousness is coming from these ideas, this collective idea that there's not enough to go around. So we have to keep the law. Do you know, it's been proven over and over and over and over again that there is no reason for a single human being on this planet to be hungry. There is more than enough food for everybody. But there are those people who say, well, no, we got to keep it here. We can't do this. That's the poverty consciousness. And is it using law? It's using law. But what happens is eventually the law catches up to you. Always. Always. Part of practicing the law is knowing that we are here to give. We are here to give forth our energy, our love, our abilities, our understanding. That is how the law of supply works. There is an infinite, unlimited supply of all we ever need or can be, or can possibly use. In fact, there is so much supply that there is nothing we could ever do to use it up. I want you to think about something. We tend to base what we think we have on what is right within our little circle of experience. You know, our homes, our jobs, our community. But if you think with the mind of God, a universe, is there any shortage of anything anywhere in the universe? No. And every other life form does not go around going, oh, I don't think I'm going to have enough. They don't sit and worry about it. They live, they take in, they give out, and they trust. You know, Jesus talked about, look at the lilies of the field, the birds in the sky. They don't think about where it's coming from. They know where it's coming from. So it cannot be used up. And we are not punished for anything, any way we use it, except by our own consciousness. We have a saying in Unity that we do not believe you are punished for your sins, but oh yeah, you can be punished by them. But the good news is, we can just change how we do things. It's all about cause. Supply is about cause. And the cause, we can call the cause God. That is the seed. Everything is contained within the seed. I told you about the pine cone I got last week that I'm going to plant and grow from. You know, some people see a pine cone. I looked at it and I saw the seeds that were inside of it. And when I thought about those seeds, I could see trees growing in my yard and around my neighborhood and community. I didn't see just a pine cone. Some people would say, oh, look at that pine cone. It looked real pretty sitting on my shelf. Well, what's it doing? How are you using it? Our talents are like that. Oh, I've got all these great talents. What have you never sang? Oh my gosh, we would never have heard that beautiful music and the piano and wow. I heard somebody say one time, talents are negative if you do not share them. And talents is all of our supply, not just our abilities. So the more you learn, the more you will learn to use what you learn in constructive ways, and the more good you will attract, and the more good you will produce, and the more good you will give away. And that creates that cycle of life. You know, we're told that we're seeking a promised land. Seek the promised land. I got bad news for you. You will never find it. Because you're in it. You're in it. This is the promised land. This is where you are living. This is where you are growing. This is where you are expanding. You are here for a divine purpose, not just here in this room, but here in this life for a divine purpose. You chose this time, I believe, to be here. And you chose this place to be here. Sometimes we forget, and we just kind of go with the flow. I'm going to close with a poem I found by Albert Romanes, and it's called The Promised Land. No more shall I look to the far skies for my Father's loving aid, since here upon earth God's treasure lies, and here God's kingdom lays. No more through the mist of things unknown I'll search for the promised land, for time is the footstool of God's throne, and I am within God's hand. The wealth that is more than finest gold is here, if I shall but ask, and wisdom unguessed and power untold are here for every task. The gates of heaven are before my eyes. Their key is within my hand. No more shall I look to the far skies, for I am in the promised land.